Well, folks will continue joining in over the next couple of minutes. We can go ahead and get started. Again, good morning, everybody. My name is Justin Barnes. I'm the Executive Director of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce Research Foundation. We are established as a separate 501c3 dedicated to providing data-driven, nonpartisan research on issues affecting the business community and the economic climate here in the state of Ohio. With me today is a panel of speakers that I will introduce shortly, who come from a diverse background, but all focused on economic development and bringing economic opportunity and job creation to the state of Ohio. First, though, I want to introduce our board president, Brian Hicks. Brian Hicks is president and CEO of Hicks Partners here in Columbus, Ohio. He is a longstanding and long-tenured expert in government affairs and government policy issues, and he has served as our president of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce Research Foundation Board of Directors since our inception in 2017. So, Brian, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Justin, and welcome everybody. Thanks everybody for joining us. As Justin said, I've had the privilege of serving as the chair of the Chamber Research Foundation since its creation several years ago. We really kind of exist to provide nonpartisan, data-driven research and really highlight issues and opportunities that kind of can help create jobs in Ohio, really improve the business climate, and kind of position Ohio for long-term competitiveness. So we're very, very excited about the panel today. We do want to bring, to the forefront through these Lunch, Learn, and Lead programs, issues that we think can help better position Ohio to create jobs for the long term. I think all of us hope that we're kind of coming out of what's been a very tough year plus, and we think there's some great opportunities. I think people feel very optimistic about the future, and it's really, really good timing, I think, to hear from our panel today about things that we can do as a state to really put our best foot forward and take advantage of some of the opportunities that come back as the economy does turn around. So we have a panel of speakers who are going to shed some light on some of those opportunities and how we can really best position ourselves. Before I turn it back to Justin and we kind of get to the panel, I do want to take a minute to recognize some of the recent efforts that Ohio has done to really position us to move ourselves forward, we think, very, very effectively. So some of you on the call might remember that in 2018, the Ohio Research Foundation put out a pretty significant study in which we called Ohio Bold, which was a blueprint for accelerating the innovation economy. That report had an awful lot of recommendations on talent and growth capital and tax rates and things like that. But one of the main core components of that was calling for the establishment of a series of innovation hubs, really connecting kind of the knowledge base and the talent base that Ohio had and leaning into creating new jobs based on new research and development. And I want to specifically kind of recognize the work that the DeWine administration and Jobs Ohio and private sector partners have done by establishing innovation districts in Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati. For those of you who are not as familiar, these are multiple million-dollar innovation districts. They will have a long-term benefit. We really think that this is exactly the right kind of thing that the state leaders have to do to kind of position ourselves going forward to attract talent, build out research capabilities, increase venture capital. So congratulations to Jobs Ohio, to DSA, and the entire DeWine administration for the work they've done. Also want to recognize Jobs Ohio for the formation recently of their Growth Capital Initiative, another area that we kind of called for in the Ohio Bold Report. We just need more venture capital. We need more growth capital. We need to do a better job of getting kind of our fair share of venture capital money in the state of Ohio. And Jobs Ohio has stepped up to help on that. And we want to commend Charlie, you and the team for doing that. And finally, before I turn it back, I want to just recognize Director Mihalik and DSA and the administration for a great success in the passage and signing of House Bill 2, which, if those of us on the phone know, will provide an awful lot of support to build out residential broadband. I think one of the things that we clearly have seen in the last 14, 15, 16 months is that if you don't have broadband, you don't have kind of the technical infrastructure, it's going to be very difficult to do your jobs, to get your research done, and to even do basic education. So Ohio has taken a really strong step forward with the passage of House Bill 2. Very high priority for the legislature, very high priority for the governor and lieutenant governor. And we just commend Director Mihalik and the team for that. So a lot of progress has been made. We think there's a lot of progress to be made, and there's a lot of opportunities kind of coming out of this pandemic environment. And that's why we want to have this panel discussion today. So thanks everybody for joining us. And Justin, let me turn it back to you.
Great, thank you, Brian. Appreciate that introduction. Just before we get started with each of the panelists, I do want to inform our audience, if you ever have any questions about any of the remarks given by our speakers or have Q&A that you'd like to have the panelists answer at the end of our discussion today, there is a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen there. Just go ahead and type your question in, or you can use the chat box function, either one, and I will make sure that our panelists are made aware of the questions as they come in, and we'll save those for the discussion at the end here. So first, I'd like to introduce Dr. David Scheidler of Heartland Forward, who joins the organization after more than a decade at Oklahoma State University, most recently serving as a professor of community and economic development in the Department of Agricultural Economics. In those roles, he oversaw projects in community and rural development and small business development, and published peer-reviewed research articles on the economic impacts of internet access, incentive programs, and local food production. In his role as Chief Research Officer at Heartland Forward, Dr. Scheidler works collaboratively with Heartland Forward's research team, including visiting fellows Richard Florida and Joel Kotkin, and is a co-author of a recent report from Heartland Forward titled Reshoring America. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brian. It's great to be here with you all this morning. Just want to open our conversation with a few thoughts regarding reshoring. Undoubtedly, COVID-19 has had overwhelming impacts on our economy, not to mention the impact on our lives and personal wellness. Of course, one of the first indicators of this was the unique critical lack of medical equipment that was available to protect and treat those who were affected by COVID. But this just highlighted our nation's overdependence upon foreign locations for manufactured products. But the offshoring issue, I think, that the pandemic has highlighted extends well beyond just the pandemic and towards permanent concerns over industrial supply chains, worker training, as well as national security. So for the conversation today, I'd like to throw out a definition of reshoring that would describe not just the relocation of production facilities, but also the creation of new facilities here in the US. And we've already begun to see that many domestic and foreign companies are recognizing the strategic advantages of producing here in the United States. These strategic advantages would include the protection of intellectual property rights, as well as shortening supply chains so that you have greater control over the quality, processing, and production of your materials, and possibly even lower shipping costs. Even more than that, there's been shrinkage in the wage differential between the United States, China, and other overseas locations, such that the argument for offshoring is diminishing as well. In fact, some estimates actually project that firms fail to accurately estimate these costs of producing in other countries by as much as 20%. Experts go on to estimate that 10 to 30% of US imports could actually be more cheaply produced here in the United States. But let me be clear, I'm not advocating that all manufacturing should come back to the United States. Instead, I would say there's specific manufacturing sectors that may benefit from the relocation to the United States. There's also additional benefits that accrue to labor as well as government from reshoring manufacturing. It was estimated in 2019 that over 400,000 jobs can be attributed to reshored manufacturing activities, and that number is expected to grow. In 2018, a study found that manufacturing workers made 13% more than all other workers in terms of hourly wage, including the benefits. We also know that manufacturing not only typically pays a higher wage, but they're also much more likely to provide benefits associated with the jobs that they provide. I should also mention that manufacturing jobs are not that would be reshored are not the same jobs that we've lost in the past. By and large, most manufacturing jobs are not dirty, dangerous, and monotonous. And instead, these are jobs that people will want because they're automated, because they're in clean factories, and they provide upward mobility potential. Today's manufacturing employees program robots, do quality assurance analysis, and do operate other high-tech equipment to create products. So these are good jobs. And when households have sufficient income, disposable income, they can afford to buy things like houses, entertainment, and other local goods and services, which lead to increased local and state sales and property tax revenues, as well as income tax revenue. And they also stimulate the demand for local goods and services. So economists, we often call these additional benefits the multiplier effect associated with manufacturing. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk about how the Heartland specifically could benefit from reshored activities. It may not surprise you that the US Heartland, which would include Ohio, is most likely to benefit from reshored activities. Because of its historic dependence upon manufacturing, there remains a culture, as well as a skilled labor pool, workforce programs, and existing infrastructure to support manufactured activities. But there's also a presence and diversity of manufacturing throughout the region that would support reshoring activity by providing domestic suppliers through availability and proximity. The growth of financial and professional services in the Heartland further contribute to the desirability of the central US as a place for manufacturers, given the shift within the industry to outsource these aspects of the business. As Brian mentioned, we embarked upon a report that we released called Reshoring America back in fall of 2020. And that report was actually released unplanned by us the same week that President Biden issued an executive order promoting domestic manufacturing. That said, we believe that now there is more bipartisan support for reshoring than has ever existed in Washington. Reshoring activity is going to take more than just renegotiated trade agreements and tariff negotiations. Instead, it's going to require intentional efforts to encourage the behavior of reshoring. So carrots and sticks need to be explicitly part of the policy framework. To be truly successful, priority should be given to those sectors that are going to grow. And specifically, we should focus on the critical supply chain gaps that have connections to national security and essential services. Lastly, we need to concentrate on infrastructure improvements and enhancements that are needed as the Biden administration has proposed in the American Jobs Act to ensure that America remains competitive in the broader global economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scheidler. Appreciate your insight. Next, we turn it over to Director Lydia Mihalik. Director Mihalik is the director of the Ohio Development Services Agency, which is responsible for investing more than $1 billion annually in communities, businesses, and individuals to contribute to a better life for all Ohioans. Prior to her appointment by Governor Mike DeWine, Director Mihalik served as the 55th mayor of the city of Findlay in Northwest Ohio. The first woman to hold the city's top post, Director Mihalik led the revitalization of the city's downtown, attracting new job creators from around the world. And through her efforts, Findlay was recognized as the top micropolitan in the nation by Site Selection Magazine for economic development and job creation in 2013. Findlay continued to win the award every year during Mihalik's tenure. Director Mihalik has a proven track record as an inclusive leader who brings people together to address large, complex issues. She served on the advisory board for the bipartisan U.S. Conference of Mayors, and she co-founded the Ohio Mayors Alliance, a coalition of mayors of Ohio's 30 largest cities. She brings a mayor's work ethic to collaborate with local leaders on community development. She and her husband Drew have 3 children, and they live in Findlay. And Director Mihalik, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Justin. Thank you very much, and it's great to be with all of you today. I appreciate the opportunity to share some insights here and really have an opportunity to have a dialogue here as we kind of get through the panel. It certainly has been quite a year, and we are well on our way, I believe, in Ohio to making our way to a full economic recovery and then some. We're certainly not there yet, but we're making some great strides, and investments are certainly going to help us get there. As you kind of look at the landscape economically, Ohio's gross domestic product has outpaced the nation in the final quarter of 2020. The US GDP is estimated to have grown at about 4.3%, while Ohio's is estimated to have increased about 5%. Ohio's unemployment rate in March of 2021 was 4.7%. National rate was at 6%. So we're doing well in those measurements. And Ohio's tax revenues have exceeded the estimates by about 2.6%. And if you're wondering, well, what the heck does that mean? It's about $41 million. So we're doing well. And, I got to say that this is all possible, quite frankly, because, Governor DeWine took steps at the onset of the pandemic to ensure that the state budget remained balanced and stable. And, our state is on track to be in a better position post-COVID. There are a lot of states in this country that are struggling economically, but we are not one of them. But a key for our state in order to continuing to move in that positive direction and moving past COVID is getting more Ohioans vaccinated. 40% of Ohioans have started the vaccination process, and we're also obviously working with our employers, and they have been great, our employers and other organizations to offer these workplace vaccination clinics by partnering with local providers. And if you want to get in on that action, there's more information available at coronavirus.ohio.gov/vaccine. We've also been working very diligently with the Office of Workforce Transformation. It's right in our wheelhouse in working with the leadership of Lieutenant Governor John Husted, providing resources to really get focused on helping Ohioans gain new skills. We've got this flagship program with TechCred and the Individual Micro-Credential Assistance Program that are helping provide resources for training and credentialing programs that are going to really help Ohioans learn new skills, for that tech-based economy that we all like to talk so much about. Ultimately, I know that the last year has been super tough for Ohio businesses, and certainly in some Ohio sectors more than others. But the overall resilience of our business owners and our entrepreneurs to be able to really adapt to that new normal and find innovative solutions to help the state slow the spread of COVID was absolutely amazing. We had established institutions like Battelle and Little Tikes that were working to address the PPE shortage, to startups like Sterling Ultra Cold that were developing a way to store the vaccine. And Ohio has always been and continues to be an innovative state. We like to say that innovation is in our DNA. And at development, we're focused on supporting our business community and those entrepreneurs. And in the past year, we've been focused on providing grants to help reshore that PPE production. We've been focused on supporting our small and our minority-owned businesses. We've worked with our friends at Jobs Ohio on economic development projects that are creating more and more jobs for Ohioans. I got to tell you, the pipeline is super strong as of late. We've also invested in many of our regional organizations, like the Economic and Community Development Institute, or ECDI, and our Appalachian Growth Capital friends, or AGC. And what those groups do, they're CDFIs that help support small and minority-owned businesses. And people will say, well, what does that mean? And what kind of results are you seeing? And we gave both of them loans at about $10 million apiece. And what it does is it really helps leverage and it helps leverage additional investment, and it helps leverage potential jobs and additional job creation. And both at AGC and at ECDI, we've got loans to 685 businesses. 50% of them are women-owned. 75% of them are minority-owned. And the cool thing is that the average loan is about $24,000. And so what's nice about this, and the stories that we've been hearing, are these are businesses that have adapted during the pandemic to survive. And these dollars from the state through these CDFIs have been really helpful, and they're keeping Ohioans employed, and they're just great stories. And we're going to continue to work with these institutions to really get out there with these Main Street businesses and help support our small businesses in Ohio, because they're really the backbone of the economy here in the state. And development's also worked very closely with the teams at Innovate Ohio to help address the access to broadband. We did have a great week to be able to celebrate House Bill 2. And one thing that the last year did, of course, as Brian was mentioning, was bring to the forefront the importance of every Ohioan having access to high-speed internet. And so, as was discussed, broadband's top of mind. As Governor DeWine signed House Bill 2 on Monday, it was a great event over in Middletown. And of course, that bill allows development in the Office of Broadband Ohio to identify and support projects that are really going to increase the availability of broadband to our underserved and unserved communities. There are about 1 million Ohioans in the state that do not currently have access to broadband, and we want to fix this. And so this particular legislation is going to allow us to build on the recent success that we've had throughout the pandemic. Broadband Ohio and Peter Voderberg have been really busy. Over the past year, we've launched a telehealth pilot project with Switzerland Local Schools down in Monroe County to help support that district's behavioral health specialists. We've worked with Jobs Ohio, and we've partnered with Starlink to provide service via satellites just over in Union County, not far from here in Columbus. And two of our pilot projects have actually helped residents in Logan County and East Cleveland to receive internet access that they needed at an affordable price, which is something that is super important to us and top of mind as well. And this grant program that's being created by House Bill 2 is going to help us do so much more. And now we get to make that work that the governor and lieutenant governor's vision of high-speed internet access to every Ohioan a reality. This week also, Governor DeWine signed Senate Bill 108 and Senate Bill 109, which provides funding for small businesses that started in 2020, pre-pandemic. There was a lot of assistance that came out for established businesses, but we had a lot of entrepreneurs that took a risk between like January in 2020 and March of 2020 that weren't eligible for assistance. And so we have some funding in both of those pieces of legislation that will be helpful. This legislation also helps with hotel and lodging industry, with bars and restaurants, with entertainment venues, as well as additional funding for that small business relief grant program that we stood up at the end of last year, hoping to be able to get everyone that had applied in the past. Our team is currently developing those guidelines and applications for those programs right now. And I got to tell you, we went right to work, and we're going to have lots of information for everyone in the coming weeks about how all of these businesses can apply. As we looked also at our budget recommendations for this year, we really realized that there were a few ways that we could address some gaps in our existing programs. And so, working closely with our local partners and Jobs Ohio, we found that there are companies that do not meet the eligibility requirements for the current job creation tax credit. So we proposed a $25 million small business job creation tax credit that's structured just like the current JCTC. And it's going to be made available to businesses that do not meet the current minimum job and payroll thresholds for the program. It's still going to be performance-based. It's still going to be overseen by the tax credit authority. And the company's still going to have to be required to show the tax credit is a major factor in proceeding with the project. The state of Ohio traditionally just hasn't had direct financial incentives for those small businesses that may be investing significantly in machinery and equipment or other capital, investment in their business. And they may be hiring folks, but maybe it's not so much, in terms of a lot of employees. But we still want to be able to incentivize their investment here in the state. And so this is really a way for our state to be able to support our small businesses as they grow and they create jobs. Over the last year, our partners at the Small and Minority Business Development Centers have worked with a record number of clients. And our team realized that we needed to broaden the amount of resources that we can provide these businesses as they look to grow. And so we proposed 2 new loan programs. They're the minority-owned business microloan and also the women-owned business loan. Both of these loan programs are funded at $5 million apiece. We're looking forward to continuing to work with the General Assembly to fund these efforts in the upcoming state budget. Hopefully we get that done here in the next 30 or so days. Excited about what the next fiscal year looks like. Look, at development, we're committed to working with our local communities and our businesses, and we're certainly looking to create an environment that is conducive for investment, that helps support our entrepreneurs and our business owners, and creates a great quality of life. And we really appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Appreciate you joining us today. Turn it over to Charlie Roll. As the Director for North American Business Development at Jobs Ohio, Charlie leads the development, coordination, and execution of a unified business plan to help companies invest and grow in Ohio. In partnership with Jobs Ohio sector teams and the Jobs Ohio network partners, Charlie helps provide companies with a turnkey solution as it relates to their investment projects, whether that's creating new jobs, capital expenditures, or increased payroll. Before Jobs Ohio, Charlie worked as an international corporate attorney in Seoul, Korea, spent 13 years working as vice president for an economic development lead generation and consulting firm, and has worked in economic development with Invest Australia and the Welsh Development Agency. He has traveled extensively in his career and has lived in both Scotland and Seoul, Korea, and has been married for 26 years and has 3 kids. So Charlie, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much. Are you able to put the slide deck on? All right, sorry. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll just start off that Jobs Ohio is the state's lead economic development organization. We're structured as a private nonprofit corporation. Our mission is to drive job creation, new capital investment in Ohio through business attraction, retention, and expansion efforts. So really over the past year or so, Jobs Ohio has really been focused on doing a lot of reshoring activity. This reshoring activity really ranged from business development, marketing, thought leadership to project support. So with this in mind, I'd like to just kind of walk you through some of those reshoring highlights. Next slide, please. Business development. During the pandemic, one of our strategies in terms of my team was to really focus on reaching out to those companies whose supply chains were actually negatively impacted by the pandemic. Electronics, PPE, medical devices, packaging. Even though these companies, at the time were really struggling with the pandemic and how it was impacting their business, they surprisingly were willing to listen to potential options that Ohio had to offer. So many of them never really forgot those early conversations. And I'm really happy to say that the strategy worked and that a number of these companies are reaching back out to us. And we have a number of leads relating to reshoring and expansion. Next slide, please. Marketing team's done a great job. Current marketing campaign is Ohio is for Leaders. The campaign really focuses on attracting companies from high cost, highly regulated states such as California, Illinois, and New York. the focus has really increased Ohio's profile and is certainly generating results from both an investment and reshoring standpoint. Next slide, please. We've been involved in a lot of different types of partnerships. The Heartland Ford we partnered with. The final report that was produced was amazing. We used that to broadcast that to companies, stakeholders, journalists, very positive remarks, and actually has also led to a couple potential deals in the future. We also worked with the Business Council for International Understanding. If you're not aware of who they are, they're a nonpartisan organization that works to really expand international trade and commerce. We held a virtual event with over 100 corporate participants, featuring the then Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, Keith Krop, Lieutenant Governor Husted, and Jobs Ohio CEO, JP Nassif. And then finally, we partnered with the Ohio Business Roundtable to really discuss supply chain resiliency with their members. So when you look at all those partnerships, I think it really helped us understand what reshoring was about, and allowed us to kind of structure our focus on attracting new companies into Ohio from that perspective. Next slide, please. So with some of those things that we've done, I think we're seeing the fruits of our labor. This is just giving you examples of some of the companies that Jobs Ohio has worked with and helped. Phoenix Quality Manufacturing doing mask production in Jackson, Ohio. Troy Laminating, a French multinational group doing N95 mass production. Serum Fab, onshoring production. And Mark One Manufacturing, Minster, Ohio, reshoring PPE production. There's several reasons why these companies and other companies choose Ohio, and especially from a reshoring standpoint. When you look at the fact that Ohio has a simple tax structure, a central location, transportation access, and certainly that legacy of manufacturing expertise, I think we're sitting in a very good position to really compete with others on reshoring deals. Next slide, please. Not to mention the range of incentives that Jobs Ohio and the state are able to offer. And I just named a few. The Jobs Ohio Economic Development Grant that's really focused on fixed asset infrastructure investment. You've got the Jobs Ohio Workforce Grant, which provides funding to companies for employee development and training programs. And then, of course, the Job Creation Tax Credit, which is a refundable performance-based tax credit calculated as a % of created payroll. These are strong incentives, and especially in these tough times for different types of states, we're at the forefront of this reshoring opportunity and really adding a lot of value to these companies as they look for new opportunities to shore up their supply chain. Next slide, please, which is my last slide. But in conclusion, we've made a lot of progress so far. We're seeing several reshoring deals pending in the coming months, and I think it's going to be just a great summer in terms of announcements. Reshoring is definitely on Jobs Ohio radar, my radar as well from a business development standpoint, and is something that Jobs Ohio will continue to focus on even post-COVID. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate you being with us today. And just a reminder to our audience, the Q&A function is available for you to ask questions of our panelists. There's a couple that have filtered in, and we hope to get more questions coming from the audience, so our participants, our panelists can answer those questions for you. I did want to start with a couple of questions for our panel based on your remarks today. Dr. Scheidler, can you elaborate further on why firms might find the U.S. a more competitive location for production? I know that that was a key aspect of your report, but if you could just expand on that a little bit more.
Sure. So a lot of the US's competitiveness come from many of the things that Charlie just talked about that make Ohio great as a location. Access to markets, as well as the workforce. The US is still the place to go for master's and other graduate level training in the sciences and engineering. So it's no wonder that we're a world leader in terms of innovation. So in terms of research, development, and innovation type activities, we're highly competitive for those kinds of activities. And it's places like Ohio State University and Michigan and others throughout the heartland that really contribute to that workforce success. But it also, one thing that often is overlooked and contributes to the underestimation of the cost of producing overseas is political stability. And so the fact that the US has strong IP regulations, as well as a stable government, so firms can consistently know what the rules are going to be and which ones are going to be enforced and how, is critical to their future planning. And unfortunately, many of the quote unquote lower cost or offshore locations don't share that same political stability that allows for that planning horizon.
Great, thank you. Dr. Mihalik, I want to turn it over to you for a second. You had mentioned the tech cred and the micro-credentialing programs as important tools to help bolster Ohio's workforce. Can you just expand on those programs a little bit more and perhaps kind of related to the answer that Dr. Scheidler just gave on the opportunities that exist for Ohio?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, the Tech Cred program was really a program that was created after, both Governor DeWine and Lieutenant Governor Husted were just listening to the business community as a way to really address some of these workforce challenges. I would say, from an economic development perspective, early on when I first got into this business, it was all about, finding the right location. Right, finding the right location where you could actually stand up your business, where site selection was something that was big. And now it seems like the one thing that's top of mind for a lot of these companies is workforce, and being able to find the available workforce so that they can continue and have continuity of operations. I got my lights turned off. Workforce is top of mind and something that's front and center. And so the administration really went to work right away at developing this Tech Cred program in conjunction with the legislature. And Tech Cred is a response to offering up an incentive for companies to be able to upskill existing employees in a technology field. And it's been enormously successful. I think early on we thought what we wanted to do was get 10,000 industry recognized credentials earned in just the first year. And I'm happy to say that within the last 18 months of the program, we're in excess of 20,000. So it's going really, really well. We've had an incredible uptake in it. And so the Tech Cred piece is the business side of things, and the individual micro-credential program, or IMAP, is actually the individual piece. And so one can go about earning a industry recognized credential from the individual side. You can actually do that through an institution, through an educational institution, higher ed, and you can do that on your own. So both programs were funded in our first couple of years. We're looking to expand upon that in this next budget, and they're a key component of the overall economic development strategy for the state of Ohio.
Great, thank you very much. This question is, I guess, both for Charlie and Dr. Mihalik, and it ties into the answer that Dr. Mihalik just gave. With regard to site selection and the announcement of I guess the signing of HB2 and the creation of the residential broadband deployment grant program, does that make site selection for businesses easier? Or from a Jobs Ohio perspective, are you better able to pitch businesses on expanded lists of sites they could go to, as there's more and more opportunity to locate a business in those areas that might be better served with an increased broadband capacity?
Yeah, absolutely. Expanding that broadband capacity is so important from a workforce standpoint, from a tech standpoint, especially when you're seeing so many companies allowing work from home. Being able to get the labor in certain areas that they wouldn't be able to otherwise without that broadband, I think is very important to some of these companies. And we're definitely seeing a number of opportunities come across from a work from home standpoint, but also the sites are very important. It just broadens our ability to be able to kind of hone in on the right site with that capability to drive an investment from a site selection standpoint.
Yeah, and I'll just add quickly, Charlie's absolutely right. It definitely provides more opportunity, not only from a company standpoint, but also just individual opportunity. I think, this administration has been keenly focused, particularly in the Appalachian region, and providing more opportunity for our folks in that region. And when you look at with this work from home, where you can live anywhere and work anywhere, and that part of Ohio, we want to make sure does have access to the economy in general. And so we can have virtual work centers and making sure that obviously broadband access as a key component of that strategy as well.
Great, thank you very much. Dr. Scheidler, I'd like to turn it back to you again. Can you tell us more about how the manufacturing industry helps to stabilize the local economies? I know that has been a big concern in the wake of the pandemic.
Absolutely. So manufacturing and other traded goods sectors, which are sectors that primarily serve people not in the community in which they're located, actually bring money into the local economy. And so that's really only one of two ways that an economy can grow. And growth is necessary for a variety of issues, whether that's maintaining a property tax base to fund schools locally, or to maintain competitiveness, and have adequate funding for infrastructure and other sorts of goods and services that other employers are going to need as well. So manufacturing is able to bring in income that then goes to households through wages, and then they spend those at non-traded businesses. So the retailers and grocery stores and entertainment providers that are available locally, which are just as important because they provide quality of life and make our communities where we live desirable places to be, which further reinforces the ability to attract labor to those places.
Great, thank you very much. And I did want to actually just piggyback on that because you had mentioned competitiveness in your answer there. What specifically can state governments do? What specifically can the federal government do to further enhance the competitiveness of manufacturing in Ohio and to help serve as that magnet for some of those businesses looking to bring their operations back to the U.S.?
So I think it's already been mentioned that workforce is critical. That is, workforce and talent are the drivers of our economy going forward. And so investments in continued educational opportunities, I think it's fantastic. What was described about the Tech Cred program in terms of the flexibility that it offers and the bite-size upskilling, if you will, rather than having to commit to a 4-year program up front. So increasing the opportunities to upskill and create upward mobility among our workforce is critical. But I think the other piece that we really can't ignore is infrastructure, other forms of infrastructure, I should say. Whether that's just looking, setting the pandemic aside, the pandemic, I would say, was a great way to highlight things that were already problematic in our economy before the pandemic set in. So setting the pandemic aside, we can look at the last 2 years or 3 years and look at failed levees and dams and the lack of flooding control and how that impacted, whether that was distribution of products and goods throughout the country and being able to access our ocean ports for international trade, or the destruction that created of plants and homes. You can also look at more recently the failure of the electrical grid in Texas during the freeze this past winter. That not only knocked out a bunch of industry in the moment, but we're still feeling ripple effects of that as petrochemical plants have been offline for almost 6 months now, which then provide critical materials that are inputs into other industries across the country. And so, and I guess hitting closer to home, we have the I-40 Hernando de Soto Bridge just west of Memphis that's been shut down because of a cracked support brace. If we don't fix these broader infrastructure needs that provide for public safety and provide critical electrical, water, and transportation needs to our industries, they're not going to be able to produce. They're not going to be efficient. They're not going to be able to compete.
Great, thank you very much. And speaking of infrastructure and the existing expertise and knowledge base that exists in Ohio, can either Charlie or Director Mihalik talk about the benefits that Ohio has being located in the central part of the country with major interstates running north, south, and east and west, and serving as that logistical hub for so many of the manufacturers and businesses across the state that allow them to move their product and provide those services in a much faster fashion. Either one of you want to speak to that a little bit and how that helps you sell the story of Ohio when it comes to when you're talking to businesses?
Well, okay. Do you want to go, Director?
Charlie, I'll let you take a stab at it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is one of the reasons having that transportation network, I think the third largest in the country, having access to the east, west, north, south coasts, trucking, rail, ports. This is why you have manufacturing companies looking at Ohio. This is why you have logistics and distribution companies putting huge facilities in Ohio. It's because the ability to deliver the product just in time, not necessarily just in time, but immediately. And that's what people want these days. They want immediate delivery. And I think just having that infrastructure really allows us to sell it. And from a logistics and distribution standpoint, the big push these days, and we're seeing a lot of opportunity, is e-commerce. Companies that are selling online that need to not only have a large distribution facility or last mile distribution facilities. So we have a great story to tell, and that's the bread and butter for us.
Yeah, when I was mayor of Findlay, we used to jokingly refer to Findlay as like the center of the logistics universe. Up there on Northwest Ohio on I-75, but quite frankly, Ohio is that. We have a lot of advantages, given our ports and our roads. There's just so much to be accessed and gained when you locate here. And I think, don't believe us. We're going to be super bullish on us, and we like to tell everyone about how great Ohio is, but just take a look at the private investment here, where people have strategically invested billions of dollars in Ohio because it makes sense. They're close to their market, and Charlie's exactly right. E-commerce is a thing, and people are taking advantage of it, and the pandemic has offered that opportunity. And it's really highlighted the advantages of being located here in Ohio, and more people are starting to figure it out.
Great, thank you very much. I'll turn to some audience questions now. And again, as a reminder to our participants, if you have a question for our panelists, the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen there, go ahead and type in your question and I'll read it off to our panelists here. The first question I will send to Dr. Scheidler. What sectors do you think should be reshored? You mentioned that reshoring might not be, an opportunity for all sectors, but what sectors do you think would be better served by reshoring?
So I think the short answer are going to be filling those supply chain gaps. And President Biden's administration is actually just a few weeks away from releasing an assessment of what specifically those sectors are. But I think it's pretty safe to say that telecommunications equipment manufacturing is going to be on that list. Semiconductor both semiconductor manufacturing, but also mineral production that goes into semiconductor processing will be on that list. We've already mentioned medical equipment and PPE several times will be on that list. So I think the short answer is, look to that list that the Biden administration is going to be producing here in a couple of weeks. But I think in terms of broad principles, it's things that Director Mihalik and Charlie have already mentioned. It's those industries that need access to markets, whether it's suppliers wanting to be able to supply final goods producers in a just-in-time or immediate kind of situation, or on the other end, it's final producers wanting to get their product as quickly as possible to the consumer. It's also going to be industries that are highly capitalized, that are needing high skilled labor. Again, it goes back to talent is the name of the game in the economic development world right now, because so much of our industry is focused on either or utilizing technology in one form or another. And so if you have that skilled and trained workforce, you're going to have a competitive advantage for industries that heavily utilize that kind of labor.
Great, thank you very much. The next question is for Charlie and Director Mihalik, and it's, is Ohio looking to explore domestic trade trips to states like California, New York, and Texas to help Ohio, quote unquote, reshore companies to the Buckeye State? Charlie, I know that you mentioned the marketing campaign that Jobs Ohio has undertaken, but didn't know if either you or the director could shed some light on some potential domestic trade trips to other states.
Director Mihalik, do you want to handle?
Well, I got to tell you, JP and I have been talking about this for the last several months. And in fact, we were talking about how we couldn't wait to get our vaccinations, because it gives us our passport to be able to explore again. And, we have been talking about getting out and telling the story about Ohio, and especially on the coasts. It has been no secret that we want, people are really reevaluating. Particularly on the tech side, about what's important to them and where they want to be located, and we want people to make Ohio. We want people to have Ohio top of mind, and so we are definitely considering what that looks like and putting our strategy together right now. But Charlie, I'll let you
Sure.
talk about more specifics.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we've worked a lot on the East and West Coast pitch deck, especially as it relates to IT, availability of talent in Ohio, access to markets, universities. It's really interesting. Over the last maybe month or so, we're just getting so much feedback from companies that we're meeting with that are really saying that their hands are tied. There's so much regulation going on in places like California, high tax. They can't afford the people, from a salary standpoint, and they are looking at Ohio. And we're using that pitch deck. And I have heard that the business development team and myself will be putting together, trips out to the East and West Coast, specifically in that regard. And we do that on a regular basis anyway. But it's the IT tech focus that I think is going to be a winner for Ohio, because we've got so much talent and so much opportunity at a lower cost too. So.
Excellent, thank you very much. And we are dwindling down on the number of audience questions. I know that some more are coming in, but again, for the folks in the audience, feel free to pop those questions into the Q&A portion here. Another question for Dr. Scheidler. In your research, have you identified any key policy hurdles facing Ohio that would put the state at a competitive disadvantage? Are the incentive programs that we have in place robust enough, or would you recommend changes to those?
So I'm going to have to ask for forgiveness on this one. I'm not acutely aware of all of the different programs that Ohio has. But I will say, and so I'm hesitant to comment on what those barriers to development might be. I will say, however, that one of the programs that I am familiar with is the payroll reimbursement program that Charlie mentioned earlier. It is a very successful, not only is it a successful strategy because it allows companies to keep cash that they can then reinvest into their companies or use to hire additional employees. But it's got the built-in clawback mechanisms in it that people often get worried about with incentives. And so I would say from an academic or a research perspective, I would say Ohio is one of the forefront states in terms of using those kind of techniques and being wise with their incentive dollars and how they're used to make sure that you have companies that are using the incentives for their intended purposes, bringing good jobs to the state, and then investing so that they stay.
Great, thank you very much. Next question is for Director Mahalik. Does Ohio have a loan program that offers loans to small businesses to purchase a new building in order to grow?
Yeah, short answer is yes, absolutely, we do. And our team would love to talk to you about it. So we'll make sure that you have the link to the information and the right contact folks that you can share.
Excellent. Next question, I'm going to kind of give a little bit of lead up to. When we released our report, Ohio Bold, we called for the creation of the innovation hubs, as Brian mentioned, and obviously it's a three-legged stool. It's connecting resources through venture capital with the existing knowledge and expertise that is in Ohio already, but it's also about talent. And all three of you have discussed talent in different capacities during this conversation. And obviously, Tech Cred is an important tool to help employers build a skilled workforce. And the question is the state exploring ways to keep more of Ohio's college graduates here at home?
Yeah, so the short answer is, again, yes, we are. And in fact, Jobs Ohio has done a great job. And I don't know, Charlie, if you want to talk a little bit about the Find Your Ohio campaign that you've done, I can certainly put the link to that in the chat box. But they've had some early success. They launched it actually right before the pandemic started. But it's a great campaign, and it's something that I think is going to be great for us to be able to retain talent here from our great institutions.
Yeah, I mean, it has been successful working with people to retain, but also the kind of the boomerang effect, bringing people back to Ohio. And I think some of the results have shown that there are a lot of young people that moved out for those opportunities, but are missing Ohio, and now that they know there's opportunities for employment and opportunities for growth, they're certainly looking at coming back. So that's a very, very important point to make, is that we need those young talent to stay here in Ohio, because that's the next generation for our companies to grow and expand.
Great, thank you both very much. One final question. I know that we're dwindling down on the questions from the audience, but one final question I wanted to pose to all three of you is, when we have these discussions and we talk about these issues that are impacting the business community and the state and the economy, one of the things that we like to ask our panelists is what is the call to action? What is the main thing that the business community can do to help deliver this message to our leaders across the state, whether at the state or local level? What can the business community do to help drive this message home and help bolster Ohio's economic situation moving forward? I would turn it over to any one of you to
Well, I'll jump in, I guess. I mean, it's kind of my thoughts to, especially from a reshoring standpoint, read about it, understand it, because it's going to be an important part of the growth of Ohio, bringing some of these companies back. Talk up Ohio. I mean, that's the one of the biggest things is that Ohioans are very proud of their state and continue to support it and talk up some of these business activities that the state and Jobs Ohio are doing, because it's very important. And if you are manufacturing overseas or buying product overseas, take a look at reshoring. It may not be perfect for you or the best option, but if we can get something like that back to Ohio, I think it's going to be a major coup for everyone.
Great.
I would just add to Charlie's comments and say, one of the things that the pandemic has done is helped companies realize that our global supply chains maybe need to be shorter geographically. And so I know I'm familiar with examples that are occurring in other parts of the country where there's been a shift from the single source, largest possible agglomerative effects manufacturing to what if we used new technology and had smaller facilities that were located in multiple places that could serve multiple markets much more quickly. And so as you're reassessing your supply chain, as Charlie suggested, I would encourage people to also consider that maybe doing things a little differently is part of that consideration. And you might identify some unique opportunities to identify US-based manufacturing to supplement your supply chain.
Very good. Both great points. And I agree with Charlie, help us tell Ohio's story is something obviously that the governor and lieutenant governor feel very strongly about. My one call to action is, help us make this place even better. This administration is listening. The chamber has been a great partner to this administration. You have some great ideas. We do not have the patent on good ideas. I think what the business community told us in terms of workforce and what your needs were. We tried to address at least one component of it with TechCred, and it's been incredibly successful. But we don't want to stop there. So talk to us and tell us what you need, and help us develop solutions. We want to be helpful. We want to continue to create this environment that's conducive for investment, which will ultimately help you succeed. So continue to be communicative with us. Help us be creative, and we want you to continue to be successful. So that's my call to action.
Great. Thank you so much to all the panelists for participating today. I know that we greatly looked forward to this conversation, and we appreciate you spending time with us. And for some closing remarks, I will turn it back over to Brian Hicks.
Thank you very much. A great panel. Thanks for participating. Really good information both on kind of what's been done in the last several months and year, and what the opportunities of the future hold, because I think we all recognize that there's going to be great opportunities for states and regions that are prepared to take advantage of them. And it sounds like Ohio is very well prepared to take advantage of them. Before we close, I wanted to kind of give a sneak peek of something that the Research Foundation has been working on for some time. This is about to be released. It's the pending release of a project that we're calling the Ohio Economic Dashboard. And the idea behind this is to have an ongoing kind of central location of a snapshot of a host of economic and demographic indicators that hopefully will be useful for policymakers at the state and the local level, but also business leaders when they want to know kind of what the trends of the state of Ohio are as they make decisions on reshoring or other things. And we think the important thing about this is that you can look at these kind of key snapshots, and then you can do a little bit of a deeper dive, as Justin just indicated, and look at the trends on things and how things are going on a month-to-month over a long-term basis. So we will be announcing this and rolling this out officially in a matter of days. We think it's going to be a very, very good kind of one-stop shop, if you will, on some of the key indicators on how we're doing as an economy. What gets measured kind of gets improved. And we don't think that there's this type of snapshot out there in real time. And so we think this is going to be helpful. And we just wanted to make sure that everybody on the call here today had an opportunity to kind of see it. But look for this announcement probably just in a matter of days, and we will put that out. So thank you all. And hopefully as we do put this information out, all of those lines will be green. All of those lines will be trending up. And we will see more and more economic vitality in the state of Ohio. So again, thank you to Director Mihalik. Thank you to Charlie Rowell. Thank you to Dr. Schindler for being with us today, for your insights. And we appreciate everybody for joining us. And you all have a very good day. Thank you.